I never believed my grandpa's strange warnings until that night. We were sitting at the dinner table, just like any other family meal, when he leaned toward me and whispered, "When the clock strikes 8, hide in the basement. Don't ask why." I laughed, thinking he was trying to scare me. But when the lights started flickering and the walls began to shake 10 minutes later, I realized he wasn't joking. He was saving me. My name is Lena Rhodes, and I still don't fully understand what happened that night in my family's old farmhouse. But I'll never forget the sound of that clock. It was a cold Friday evening in early fall. I had driven 3 hours from the city to visit my mother and my grandpa, Walter Rhodes. My brother, Noah, was home from college, and Mom had insisted we all have dinner together. She said Grandpa wasn't feeling well lately, and she wanted us to spend time as a family. When I pulled into the driveway, the old house looked just like it did when I was a kid. It was tucked between 2 rows of oak trees, with a weathered porch and the smell of pine needles in the air. The front door creaked when I opened it, and the sound of ticking filled the hallway. Grandpa had clocks everywhere, big ones, small ones, antique ones that chimed at odd hours. It was like walking into a room full of quiet heartbeats. "Lena," Mom called from the kitchen. She rushed over and hugged me tightly. "I'm so glad you made it before dinner. Your grandpa's been asking about you all week." I smiled. "How's he doing?" She gave a small sigh. "Some days are better than others. He's been saying strange things again, talking about timing and keeping the clocks running. But he's lucid, just distant." When I walked into the dining room, Grandpa was sitting at the head of the table, polishing his old pocket watch. His silver hair was neatly combed, his glasses perched low on his nose. He looked up when he saw me and smiled softly. "There's my favorite granddaughter." I laughed. "I'm your only granddaughter, Grandpa. That's what makes you my favorite," he said, his eyes twinkling for a moment before his gaze drifted back to the clock hanging on the wall. Dinner started out normal. Mom served chicken stew, Noah cracked jokes about his college roommates, and Grandpa quietly ate, occasionally glancing at the ticking clock above us. The air was filled with the smell of rosemary and the faint hum of the heater. For a while, everything felt peaceful, like the calm before a storm. Around 7:45, Grandpa's demeanor changed. He kept glancing toward the window, then at the clock, as if waiting for something. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted his spoon. "Grandpa," I asked, "are you all right?" He didn't answer right away. Then he leaned toward me, his voice low but steady. "Lena, when the clock strikes 8, go to the basement. Don't ask why." I blinked, caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" Mom sighed from across the table. "Dad, please don't start with that again. You're scaring her." But Grandpa didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on mine, clear and intense. "Promise me, Lena." Noah chuckled. "What is this? Some kind of game?" "Promise me," Grandpa repeated, his voice sharp this time. I nodded nervously. "All right, I promise." The ticking suddenly felt louder. I could hear it in every corner of the room. Tick, tick, tick. Trying to lighten the mood, I smiled. "What's supposed to happen at 8? The world ends." Grandpa's expression didn't change. "You'll see," he said quietly. Mom tried to laugh it off, muttering something about him watching too many old horror shows. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something about his warning was real. The way he said it, the way his eyes didn't blink. It felt like he was reliving a memory rather than telling a story. As we cleared the dishes, the house felt strangely heavy. The walls creaked, and a cold draft came from the hallway, even though all the windows were closed. Grandpa kept checking his pocket watch every few seconds. When I asked him what time it was, he only said, 7:55. Mom told him to relax, but he pushed his chair back slightly, his hands gripping the table. "It's almost time," he whispered. I looked at the clock above the mantel. The second hand was moving slower than usual, each tick dragging out longer than it should. Noah noticed it too. "That's weird," he said. "It's like the clock's lagging." Grandpa stood up suddenly. "Everyone stay calm." Mom frowned. "Dad, what's going on?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the clock as the minute hand crept closer to the number 12. The ticking got louder, echoing through the entire house. The lights flickered once, twice, and then steadied again. Grandpa's voice was barely above a whisper. When it strikes 8, you go downstairs. No hesitation. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but something about his tone stopped me. I'd never seen him scared before. As the minute hand reached the top, the clock began to chime. Each ring felt like it vibrated through the walls. Grandpa's grip on the table tightened, his knuckles white. By the 8th chime, every light in the house went out at once. The sound of ticking vanished, and that's when I knew something was coming. If you're into chilling, real-life-style mystery stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to my channel and comment below where you're watching from. You won't believe what happened next when the clock struck 8. The house was completely dark after the lights went out. For a few seconds, no one said a word. The silence felt heavy, pressing down on my chest like a weight. The only sound I could hear was my own heartbeat. Then, from somewhere deep within the house, I heard it, the faint creaking of wood, slow and deliberate, as if someone was walking across the upstairs hallway. Probably the wind, Noah said, his voice tight. He pulled out his phone to turn on the flashlight, but when he tapped the screen, it didn't respond. He frowned and pressed the button again. Nothing. That's weird. My phone's dead. Mom tried hers next, but the screen stayed black. It was at 70%, she said, panic creeping into her voice. What's happening? Grandpa stood perfectly still, staring toward the window where the dim moonlight filtered through the curtains. No one move, he whispered. I could barely make out his outline in the dark. Grandpa, is this some kind of prank? I asked, trying to sound calm, but my voice trembled. He shook his head slowly. They're close. Who's close? I whispered back, but he didn't answer. The air felt colder now, biting against my skin. I could hear the old clocks ticking again, only this time they weren't in rhythm. Some ticked too fast, others too slow, their sounds overlapping in a distorted, almost mechanical heartbeat that made my stomach twist. Mom tried to turn on a lamp, but the switch clicked uselessly. This is ridiculous, she muttered, forcing a shaky laugh. It's probably just a blown fuse. She started toward the hallway, but Grandpa's voice snapped out, sharper than I'd ever heard it. Don't go near the fuse box. She froze mid-step. Dad, you're scaring everyone. He moved toward her and placed a trembling hand on her arm. If you open that door, they'll see the light. That's how they find you. His words made no sense, but the look in his eyes was enough to stop her. There was fear there, real, deep fear, the kind that doesn't come from imagination. The floor trembled slightly, just enough to make the dishes on the table clink together. Noah's voice dropped low. Is that an earthquake? Before anyone could answer, a loud thud came from upstairs. Then another. Something heavy was moving across the floor. Mom covered her mouth, her eyes wide. Grandpa grabbed the candle from the center of the table and lit it with a match. The small flame flickered weakly, casting long, trembling shadows across the walls. We're going to the basement, he said firmly. Now. We followed him down the narrow hallway toward the basement door. The candlelight barely illuminated the walls, and every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Behind us, I heard another sound, like nails scratching against wood. It was faint, but growing louder. Dad, Mom whispered. What's up there? He didn't look back. Keep walking. Noah muttered under his breath. This is insane. But even he didn't argue. When Grandpa reached the basement door, he stopped and turned to us. Once we're down there, no one opens this door, no matter what you hear. Do you understand? I nodded, swallowing hard. Mom nodded, too, clutching my arm. Grandpa turned the old brass handle and opened the door. The air that rushed out was damp and cold, smelling of earth and old wood. We descended the steps one by one, the candle flickering as we moved. The sound of the clocks grew fainter the lower we went, replaced by a deep rumble, like distant thunder beneath the floor. When we reached the bottom, Grandpa set the candle on an old workbench. The walls were lined with shelves full of tools, jars of nails, and a dozen dusty clocks. Their ticking echoed softly, steady and eerie. Noah looked around, confused. So what now? We just sit here? Yes, Grandpa said. Until it's over. Mom folded her arms tightly. Over? What's over? He hesitated, then looked straight at her. It's happened before. That caught everyone's attention. I stepped closer. What do you mean before? He rubbed his hands together, his voice low. When I was a boy, my father told me to do the same thing. Hide in the basement when the clock struck 8. I didn't listen. I peeked out the window. He paused, and the flame flickered against his face. I saw them? Who? I asked, whispering. He took a deep breath. Tall figures. No faces. Just shapes in the fog. They came from the woods, moving slow but steady. My father pulled me down before they reached the porch. The next morning, our neighbor's house was gone. Just gone. Like it never existed. The basement fell silent. Even Noah didn't make a joke this time. Then, upstairs, we heard the front door creak open. Mom's eyes widened. Someone's here. Grandpa blew out the candle. Darkness swallowed us again. Quiet, he whispered. We held our breath. Heavy footsteps crossed the living room above us, each one deliberate, slow and uneven. Something dragged across the floor, like a long coat brushing wood. The house moaned under the weight. I squeezed Mom's hand so tightly my fingers hurt. Noah whispered, "Grandpa, what if it's a person?" "It isn't," Grandpa whispered back. The footsteps stopped directly above us. Then came 3 knocks, slow, rhythmic, on the basement door. My heart pounded so loud I was sure they could hear it. Another knock, then a third. Grandpa closed his eyes and whispered something under his breath. The knocking stopped. For a long moment, none of us moved. Then the air shifted again. A faint whisper drifted down the stairs, so soft I almost thought I imagined it. Lena. It was my name. The voice sounded like Grandpa's, but he was standing right beside me. I didn't breathe. I didn't speak. I just listened as the whisper came again, this time from right outside the door. "Lena, it's safe now. Come upstairs." That's when I realized the real danger wasn't just outside. It was trying to get us to open the door. If you're still with me, keep watching, because what came next changed everything. The whisper outside the basement door sent a chill through my entire body. My name echoed softly, calm and familiar, exactly like Grandpa's voice. But he was right beside me, holding my wrist tightly. The sound was impossible, and yet it was real. The air in the basement felt colder with every passing second, heavy with something that didn't belong. My mother clung to Noah's arm, her face pale in the candlelight. Grandpa didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the door. "Don't answer it," he whispered. No one said a word. We could hear faint breathing coming from the other side of the door. Slow, measured, human. Then the voice spoke again, this time a little louder. "Lena, open up, please. It's too cold out here." It sounded desperate, pleading, but wrong, like someone trying too hard to imitate emotion. My heart hammered in my chest. I wanted to believe it was someone in trouble, but deep down, I knew better. Noah swallowed hard. "Grandpa, maybe it's a neighbor. Maybe they need help." Grandpa shook his head slowly. "No one lives close enough to walk here this late. And if they did, they wouldn't know her name." The scratching started again, light at first, then louder, like long nails dragging across the wooden door. The sound made my skin crawl. Then something pressed against the door from the other side. The wood groaned under the pressure. Mom whispered, "It's trying to come in." Grandpa's voice was calm, but firm. "They can't unless we open it. That's why they speak." "They?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Who are they?" He turned to me slowly, his eyes reflecting the candle's flame. "I don't know what they are, Lena. All I know is that they come when the clocks stop. My father said they look for someone every generation. He thought it was chance. I know now. It's choice." My throat went dry. "Choice?" He nodded. "They don't break in. They wait until someone listens, until someone opens the door." I stared at him, trying to process his words. "Then why me? Why say my name?" His face fell, lines deepening across his weathered skin. "Because this time they chose you." Before I could respond, there was a loud thud that shook the entire basement. Dust fell from the ceiling. The candle flickered wildly, almost going out. The voice on the other side grew angry now, distorted and deep. "Lena, open the door." I backed away, clutching Mom's arm. "I'm not opening it," I whispered. Grandpa moved quickly to one of the shelves and began pulling down boxes, searching for something. "We don't have much time," he said. "They're stronger than before." Noah frowned. "What are you looking for?" "A way to stop them," Grandpa said. He opened a small wooden box and pulled out an old, rusted pocket watch. Its glass was cracked, but it still ticked faintly. He held it up to his ear and nodded. "It's still working." Mom looked confused. "How is that supposed to help?" Grandpa turned to me. "This watch belonged to my father. When the lights flicker, when the clocks go still, this is the only one that keeps ticking. He said it held time back long enough for him to survive the night." He pressed it into my hand. The metal was cold, heavier than it looked. "Keep this with you," he said. "Whatever happens, don't let it stop." The ground trembled again, harder this time. The sound above us shifted from footsteps to scraping, like furniture being dragged across the floor. Then something slammed against the door, hard enough to make it bend inward. Mom screamed, and Noah grabbed her shoulders, pulling her back. Grandpa motioned to a small side room off the main basement, his old workshop. "In there," he shouted. We ran, the candle flickering violently as the door behind us cracked under the weight of something pounding on it. We huddled in the workshop as Grandpa shut the heavy wooden door and latched it. The room smelled like oil and iron, and faint moonlight leaked through a small window near the ceiling. For a moment, it was silent again. No pounding, no scratching, just the soft tick of the pocket watch in my hand. I stared down at it, watching the second hand move. Then the ticking slowed. My heart dropped. "Grandpa, it's stopping." He turned toward me quickly, panic flashing across his face. "Wind it. Keep it moving." My hands shook as I twisted the tiny dial on the side. The moment I did, a loud crash echoed from the main room. The basement door had given way. Something was in the house. Mom sobbed quietly, pressing her hand over her mouth to muffle the sound. Noah grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, his knuckles white. Grandpa stood in front of us, his old body trembling but defiant. "They won't take anyone tonight," he said through clenched teeth. The air grew freezing cold. The workshop lights flickered weakly, even though there was no power. Then I saw it, a shadow moving past the small window. It wasn't shaped like a person. It was taller, its arms too long, its movement wrong. It stopped and turned toward the glass. Two faint glowing shapes like eyes met mine. I froze. Grandpa's voice cut through the silence. "Don't look at them, Lena." I shut my eyes tight, clutching the pocket watch against my chest. The ticking quickened again, faster, steadier. Then the room filled with a strange hum, low and vibrating, like the sound of wind trapped in a tunnel. There was another crash, something slamming against the workshop door. The wood creaked, splintering at the hinges. Grandpa turned to me. "Lena, listen carefully. If they break through, you run. Do you understand?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not leaving you." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "You have to. The watch will protect you, not me." Before I could argue, the door splintered open. A rush of icy wind burst through the room, extinguishing the candle completely. In the chaos, I heard Grandpa's voice one last time, strong and clear over the roar. "Run, Lena! Now!" I clutched the watch, turned, and ran toward the basement stairs as the world behind me shook with the sound of breaking wood and something inhuman howling in the dark. If you're still watching, stay with me, because what I found when I reached the top of those stairs changed everything. I ran up the stairs so fast my feet barely touched the steps. The air grew warmer the closer I got to the first floor, but the smell, thick, metallic, and sharp, made my stomach twist. My hand clutched the pocket watch so tightly my fingers ached, but I didn't dare loosen my grip. The moment I reached the top, I froze. The door that led from the basement into the kitchen was standing wide open. The faint light from the moon poured in through the broken window, scattering across the floor. The entire house looked like it had been torn apart. Chairs were overturned, glass shattered, and deep scratches ran along the walls like claw marks. The air was thick with dust, and the old clocks that had once covered every wall were smashed, their gears scattered across the floor like silver confetti. The only one still ticking was the pocket watch in my hand. "Grandpa?" I called softly. My voice shook, echoing faintly through the house. "Mom? Noah?" No answer, just the creaking of the floorboards somewhere above me. I turned toward the stairs that led to the second floor, my breath shallow. Part of me wanted to run out the front door, but another part couldn't leave them behind. I took a slow step toward the stairs. As I moved, the floor vibrated slightly beneath my feet, like something deep under the house was still alive, breathing. The chandelier above me swayed, even though the air was still. The moment I put my hand on the railing, I heard it again. My name, Lena. This time it wasn't a whisper. It was clear, strong, and familiar. It sounded like Grandpa. "Grandpa?" I whispered back. "Where are you?" "Upstairs," the voice called. "It's safe now." I wanted to believe it. My entire body ached for that comfort, for the idea that he had somehow survived. I started up the stairs slowly, each step groaning under my weight. The hallway above was faintly lit by the moonlight streaming through the broken window at the end. The wallpaper was peeling, and the old family photos that had once hung neatly along the wall now lay shattered on the floor. As I reached the top step, I heard something strange, a faint ticking, but not from the watch in my hand. It was coming from inside one of the rooms. The door to Grandpa's old study was slightly open, the light flickering faintly inside. I pushed the door open. The room looked untouched. The books were still neatly arranged, the tools on his workbench perfectly placed, and in the center of the room stood the grandfather clock. It was the only one that hadn't been destroyed, and it was still ticking, steadily. But it was wrong. The pendulum didn't swing like it should. It moved too fast, almost vibrating, and the clock hands spun wildly in circles. In front of the clock stood Grandpa. He was facing away from me, his shoulders hunched. Relief flooded through me for a moment. "Grandpa," I said, stepping into the room. "We need to go. They're still down there." He didn't respond. I walked closer, the ticking from the clock getting louder with every step. "Grandpa, please, we have to leave." He finally turned toward me. My blood ran cold. His face looked normal at first glance, but then I noticed his eyes. They weren't his eyes. They were pitch black, reflecting no light at all. His mouth twitched as if struggling to form a smile. "You made it," he said softly. His voice was the same, but something about the tone was hollow, distant. I stumbled back. "What happened to you?" He tilted his head. "I told you to hide, didn't I? You did well." My grip tightened on the watch. "Where are Mom and Noah?" He smiled, too wide. "They're safe, for now." The pendulum on the clock swung faster, the ticking louder, filling the room. I covered my ears, but it kept getting louder, the sound drilling into my head. The floor began to shake again, books falling from the shelves. "Stop it!" I shouted. Grandpa, or whatever was wearing his face, laughed softly. "It's already begun. The clock has chosen a new keeper." "What are you talking about?" I yelled. He pointed to the watch in my hand. "That's why they didn't take you. It's not a charm, Lena. It's an invitation." I looked down at the watch. The second hand wasn't ticking anymore. It was spinning backward. The faint hum I'd heard before returned, vibrating through my hand. The air around me grew heavy, pressing in from all sides. Grandpa took a step closer. His skin looked different now, stretched too tight, gray in the dim light. His smile widened, revealing teeth that were far too sharp. The one who keeps the watch becomes the next guardian, the one who keeps time. I shook my head. No, I don't want this." "You already accepted it," he whispered, "the moment you ran." The grandfather clock behind him let out a loud chime, just one note, but it rang through the whole house. The walls trembled and light spilled from the cracks in the clock's wooden frame. The air rippled like water. Grandpa reached out his hand. "Give it to me, Lena. Let me take your place." For a second, I saw the real him. His expression softened. His eyes looked human again, sad, almost pleading. I hesitated. "If I give it to you, what happens?" He smiled faintly. "Then it ends. For you." The walls around us groaned, the cracks spreading. I didn't know what to believe anymore. My hand trembled as I lifted the watch. "If I give it to you, will they stop?" He nodded. "Yes, But hurry. I took one step forward, and then stopped. Something didn't feel right. His shadow on the floor wasn't his. It was moving on its own, stretching toward me. My stomach dropped. "No," I whispered. "You're not him." His face twisted into something inhuman. "You should have listened." He lunged forward, but before he could reach me, I threw the pocket watch into the clock. The glass shattered, and light exploded through the room. The sound was deafening, like 1,000 clocks striking at once. The figure screamed, not Grandpa anymore, but something else, before the light swallowed it whole. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the hallway. The shaking had stopped. The air was still. The house was quiet again. The grandfather clock was gone. I looked down at my hand. The pocket watch was still there, ticking softly. "Grandpa?" I whispered into the silence. No answer, only the sound of the watch, ticking in perfect rhythm. I didn't know if I had stopped whatever that thing was, or if I had just taken its place. But deep down, I already knew the truth, because when I looked at the clock on the wall, the time was frozen at 8, and the second hand started to move only when I did. The house was still. The storm outside had faded into silence, and the air inside felt hollow, almost empty, as if time itself had stopped breathing. I stood in the middle of the hallway, the pocket watch still ticking in my hand. The sound was soft but sharp in the quiet, each click cutting through the emptiness like a whisper that refused to fade. The moonlight spilled through the broken window, painting silver streaks across the old wooden floor where glass and clock parts glimmered like scattered stars. I called out again, my voice trembling. "Mom! Noah!" There was no answer, only the steady, unnatural rhythm of the watch. I walked slowly toward the kitchen, stepping over the broken remains of what had once been our dinner table. The chairs were toppled, the plates shattered, and the stew that had been steaming an hour ago was now congealed and cold. Everything looked exactly as it had before the lights went out, except there was no trace of my family, not a sound, not a footprint. It was as if they had never been there at all. I stood there in the middle of the room, frozen, when something on the wall caught my eye. One of Grandpa's old clocks, the one that had stopped during dinner, was ticking again. The hands moved in perfect rhythm, but the time wasn't right. It showed 7:59. I frowned. "No," I whispered. "It's already past 8. But then I looked at the watch in my hand. It showed 7:59 too. The second hand moved slowly, like it was waiting for me to notice. I felt my heartbeat quicken. I backed away from the wall, shaking my head. No, it can't be," I said aloud. "It's over." But something deep down told me it wasn't. I turned toward the front door. The locks were undone. The door cracked open just enough to let in a thin sliver of night air. The smell of pine and earth drifted in. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to leave the house and never look back, but I couldn't, not without knowing what had happened to them. I forced myself to look around, my eyes landing on the hallway that led to Grandpa's study. The door was gone, completely gone. Where it had stood earlier was now a blank section of wall, smooth and seamless, like it had never existed. I clutched the watch tighter, feeling the ticking vibrate against my palm. "What did you do to them?" I whispered to the house itself. No answer came, but the ticking grew louder, echoing in my head. The sound wasn't coming from the watch anymore. It was coming from everywhere. The walls, the floor, even the air around me pulsed with it. My vision blurred, the room spinning slightly as I tried to steady myself. Then I saw movement, a faint shadow in the reflection of the kitchen window. It wasn't mine. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. The shadow in the reflection didn't move like I did. It stood perfectly still, watching me. My breath caught in my throat. It was shaped like Grandpa. "Grandpa," I whispered, my voice cracking. The shadow tilted its head slightly, then raised its hand, pointing at the pocket watch. I felt tears sting my eyes. "I don't understand," I said, stepping closer. "What do you want me to do?" For a moment, everything went still. Then slowly, the reflection of the shadow smiled, a small, sad smile, and the ticking stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. My ears rang with it, and the world around me felt frozen in that single eternal moment. Then, one by one, the clocks on the walls started to chime, not in sync, but in a chaotic, rolling wave of sound that filled every inch of the house. I dropped to my knees, covering my ears, the noise so loud it felt like it was coming from inside my head. The air shimmered, and for a split second I saw them, Mom, Noah, and Grandpa, standing in the doorway of the kitchen, their faces calm, almost peaceful. I reached out toward them, sobbing, "Mom!" But before I could touch them, they faded like mist. The clocks went silent again, leaving me in darkness. I didn't know how long I sat there, maybe minutes, maybe hours. When I finally opened my eyes again, the sun was coming up. Pale light filtered through the broken windows, casting long shadows across the floor. The house looked normal again, except for the faint burn marks around the edges of the walls, where the clocks used to hang. I stood slowly, still clutching the watch. It was silent now, completely still. No ticking, no hum, nothing. For the first time, I realized I couldn't feel my heartbeat. I pressed my hand to my chest. There was nothing. The truth hit me all at once. The watch hadn't protected me. It had taken something from me. I wasn't like them anymore. I was part of the house, bound to it the same way Grandpa had been. That's why his shadow had smiled. He wasn't gone. He was part of this place. And now, so was I. When I looked at the kitchen window again, my reflection didn't move. It just stood there, smiling faintly, watching me. I whispered, "I'll keep time for you." The pocket watch started ticking again. Now, whenever I pass by the old farmhouse, it looks empty, abandoned, like it hasn't been lived in for years. But sometimes, if you stand by the front porch and listen closely, you can hear it. The faint ticking of a watch and the sound of a woman's voice whispering, "When the clock strikes 8, hide in the basement." I don't know if I died that night or if I became something else, but I do know one thing. The house is still waiting. Every 40 years, when the clocks begin to slow, it will start again. Someone new will come, and the time will reset. So if you ever find yourself near an old farmhouse with too many clocks on the walls and the air feels heavy when the hour hand hits 8, don't wait. Don't ask questions. Run before it's too late. And if you enjoyed this story and want more terrifying true-style mysteries like this one, make sure to subscribe to my channel and comment below where you're watching from. You never know when time might stop for you too.